In. We're recording. We're perfect. Great. Excellent. On the great line. Yeah.
He's actually recording it. I was like, I didn't even think about that. Yep.
You got that flask of vodka? Missouri moonshine.
All right, I'm almost ready.
Everything that's on the table is sweet tea, unsweet, is back here in the back on the table.
All right. You cannot beat a Chick-fil-A lunch. That for me is just, it's easy, it's good. Now, pardon me, I have a camera running right there. Does that look all right there? That's excellent. Could I slide that right around just a hair? How's that look? You're my video man, so are you Sean?
Yeah.
Sean, you're my video man, so keep an eye on that. Okay, well, while everybody is making their way back in, is everybody, the drinks are sort of spread out? They sort of underdid the unsweet tea, but since I don't drink unsweet tea anyway, I don't even know what the purpose of it is. So, just in way of introductions very quickly before we get started, my name is Ben Townsend. I'm with Tracker Products. We are based just south of Cincinnati, Ohio. So we're about 7 miles straight east of here, which I will get to drive when we're done here with this class. My assistant, I don't see my assistant. London? She really wanted me to do an introduction, but she's not here. So, all right. So the young lady that you see running around here, that is my 12-year-old daughter. She has been hounding me for years on end to go out and do one of these sorts of things that I do, and it never worked out. And today was the first day it finally did. So she's out of school today. She's really excited about that. If there's anything that you need, just there's London. Wave hi, London. She has a very small speaking part in this. She doesn't know what it is yet, so I'm just kidding. I won't do that for her. All right. So let me go over a little bit of the game plan here today. What I'm going to do is spend a little bit of time giving you a presentation on our evidence tracking software. All right. When this whole thing is done with in about 35 minutes, and I'll apologize ahead of time, I talk very fast. I try not to, but sometimes, man, I just get going and it's sort of cooking. And you're going to feel like you're drinking from a fire hose. Much more than all the other time you spend here. This is going to be fast. but I hope you step back and look at it and say, hey, I'm far more enlightened on what is available out there. Maybe it impacts your particular scenario in your evidence room. Who knows where this is going to go? So let me start out. I'm going to ask a question just to sort of get a feel for the audience here. And let me give you the three answers very quickly. So you can think about this for one moment, and then I'm going to ask the question, and you're going to put your hand up depending on one of the three answers that applies to you. Everybody got that? All right, so here are the three answers. I'm really happy with my evidence tracking software. I cannot imagine anything better in the world out there. That's answer number one. Answer number two is more the middle ground. I've got something, it works. Maybe there's something better. Maybe my police department won't do anything, but I'm sort of in the middle ground. And then the third part of that question, or the third answer, is going to be, I don't have anything, I'm using pen and paper, it's horrible, I can't imagine anything being worse than what this system is. Got that? So you're in one of three categories. So if you wouldn't mind, in the hand that you're not eating with, so don't throw your sandwich up in the air. Nobody around you wants Chick-fil-A all over them. So if you're in the first category, I'm happy, I cannot imagine anything better out there for tracking evidence. Just slide your hand up. Okay, real high, getting way up there. Okay, so nobody is raising their hand. Okay, so I got one that almost wants to do it, but because she's alone, she really doesn't want to stick her hand up in the air. Okay, so nobody's raised their hand. Now that's a little bit shocking. So let's go with number two. You're right in the middle. Maybe something's better, but I'm sort of happy. I'm kind of like right in the middle. Okay, there's a few more hands up. I would almost go with a little over half the class. So then pretty much the last part is, if you haven't raised your hand yet, you have to raise it now because this is the last part of the question. I got the worst thing in the world. I know it's the worst thing in the world. I literally cannot imagine anything worse than this. How many people agree with that? Okay. So there's a decent crowd in here for that. All right, so moving right along here. What is Tracker? We are evidence tracking software, all right? But what we are not is an RMS system. I think Joe's probably already covered this. I like coming on day two because he's already beat the crap out of RMS systems. And we are a dedicated evidence tracking system. What we do every day, all day long, is build evidence tracking software for people that are in this room. It's not just a little piece of what we do, it is what we do. You certainly should be able to look what I'm going to present here today and say, wow, there is a very big difference between what that is and what I have. Okay? Maybe even for those people that said, listen, I got the best thing there is, I can't imagine anything better. Maybe you realize, I thought I had the best thing, but it's not that. Okay? We'll figure that out as we go along. So just a couple of things that we're probably not going to cover in this class, but I want to make sure that nobody walks away and says, well, he didn't say they do barcoding. Okay? We do barcoding in our software. It's almost the same thing that everybody else does. You put an item in the software, you generate a barcode, and it goes on the sticker. But I'm not going to spend a lot of time covering that today because pretty much everybody does that. I concede it. It's in there. But please don't leave and go with it. He did not show a barcode. I didn't see a barcode on the screen. That means they don't do barcoding. Because I've had people leave and they're like, well, he did put a barcode up. Did I cover that adequately? Everybody agrees there's a barcode on things. All right? Moving on to the next thing. All right, chain of custody. Everybody does chain of custody. One of the basic tenets of the software is that you put an item in the system, and as it gets checked in and out, it generates chain of custody. All right? Everybody pretty much does that. I'm not going to cover that today. Well, I guess I am covering it, but I'm doing it very quickly because I want you to know it is in there. Now, when I get into digital chain of custody in a little bit, that may pique your interest a little bit more because digital evidence is sort of the big thing today. So we're going to talk about digital evidence and digital chain of custody. So we definitely will cover that. Okay? The next thing, going in and doing item searches. You should be able, with any software, to go in and do a basic search. Give me all the items brought in during this period of time and based on this officer. That's basic to all systems. I may get a little more elaborate than that, but we do basic searching. All right? Digital and physical. Now this is the one where people are certainly interested in today. All right? It's not anymore that this digital tidal wave is coming. The digital tidal wave is already here. So we're going to address how we handle physical and digital in the exact same system. Right now, probably for most of you, I've got my physical evidence over here, I got my digital over here. They're completely separated systems. I'm going to show you physical and digital. One tab is physical, one tab is all my digital evidence within the case. Now that in and of itself is a really good thing. I mean, imagine if you could just bring up one system that had all your physical and digital in it. We're going to cover that. Okay, the last thing before I actually get into the demo of the software is this concept of automate everything. So let me ask you a question here real quick. How many of you within the last, let's say, 6 months, the chief has come, or sheriff, or whoever comes into your office, we'll go lieutenant or whatever, I know the chiefs don't come into the evidence rooms, but the lieutenant, sergeant, whatever walks in and says, you are going to be amazed to hear this. We literally have extra resources, and they want to put another person in the evidence room just for you to help clean this thing up. Anybody had any sort of conversation like that recently? I already know the answer to that question. There's no way anybody's raising their hand on that one. We live in a world today where resources are dwindling. They're expecting you to do more with less. All right? If your day-to-day job in the evidence room is just getting this crap in, and that's what you do all day long, you're just dealing with the junk coming in the door. You don't dispose of anything. It's just piling up. As a matter of fact, yesterday, I believe, if Joe still does this, he's been doing it for 10 years, I can't imagine he wouldn't have done it. He asked a question at the beginning of the class. The first thing he covers. All right, let's go around the room in what, 3 words or less. Give me your biggest problem, and you can't repeat it. You can't use the same word somebody else said. I think Joe still does that. But inevitably, when he goes around and does that, and you look at all the answers that are given, they sort of all come around to one problem: disposition. You go around and, piling up. Can't get rid of stuff. Nobody responds to my email. I'm running out of space. And Joe says you don't have a space problem, you got a disposition problem. Okay, here's the whole point that I'm making. The way you begin to affect disposition and the way you do more with less is when you begin to automate everything. I'm not talking about just automating the officers logging in and entering their own evidence. I'm talking about automating the life of evidence from collection to disposition. So we're definitely going to dig into that as we get going along here. So let's do this. I'm going to flip over at this point, and I'm going to hop into our software. All right, now I'm already logged into the system. For any tech geeks that might be in the room, this is a completely browser-based system. So part of the beauty of it is I walked in with my laptop, I tied into the Wi-Fi in the building, and I've got access to our software, and I'm logged in. Okay, now I want to sit right here on this screen for just a moment and talk about some of the things that you see on the screen right now, and probably relate it to what you're dealing with in your evidence room right now. So when I log in, you guys get a bit of a view of a couple of graphs that are on the main screen. So to elaborate on this graph right here, this shows a rolling timeline of how much stuff is coming in the room, green line, versus how much stuff is being disposed of during that same period of time. Okay? Now when you look at that graph right there and you see that the green line is far above the blue line in almost every case except November, you begin to get an idea of what's going on in that evidence room. Imagine if every day you logged in and that sort of thing is staring you in the face, and your blue line actually looks like flat line, which is indicative of a lot of property rooms that are out there. We're not getting rid of anything. In fact, that green line may just go up. Just to flip over real quick, because this is a live system, I want to flip over and I'm going to show you Des Moines Police Department in Des Moines, Iowa. They're a client of ours. They've been in the system for a little bit over a year right now. Look at their graph. Now, I'm not showing you hypothetical information. I'm telling you right now, if you call up the Des Moines Police Department and ask them about statistics in their evidence room, you can see that they average about 1,800 new pieces of evidence every month. But sort of the cool thing is you can see that twice a year they do these dispositions where they start to harken up. Okay? Here's the main point about showing this screen off and some of the other information that's on it. Let me go down just a little bit more. Top right-hand corner, this is the top 5 types of items that come into their room. And probably like everybody else, it's drugs, weapons, and those are some of their big ones. But as I scroll a little bit further down the screen, look at all that. Now you may say, wow, that looks like a big pile of information. But when you actually dig into that, within a matter of a moment, I can tell you right now that in Des Moines, right now they have 27,000, all items in their evidence room are 27,000. They have 1,300 items checked out. They have a total of 112,000 disposed items. And look, just go on the screen. So if you call anybody at Des Moines right now, they're not going to be like, oh gosh, I have no idea how much we're bringing in, we have no much drugs, we don't know how much the money is. I mean, look at the bottom right-hand corner, all the summaries of all their currencies versus counterfeit. The number one problem in evidence rooms, in reality, when it comes to disposition and getting rid of stuff, is most people have no clue what they've got to begin with. You can't begin to deal with all this crap until you know what your crap is. Okay? If you look at, let's scroll down just a little bit further and let's amplify this a little bit. I'm looking at a graph right down here in the bottom right-hand corner, again, of Des Moines. I can tell that they've got 142,000 items that have ever been entered. The red is how much of this stuff has been disposed of. That's active and that's checked out. What do you guys think, when you just see that graph alone, what do you think about that? What does that tell you? Anybody say, I'd really like to have that? Can I just have that one right there? Can I make that my graph? Okay? Des Moines is pretty amazing. They are on top of their stuff. They get rid of it. And that you can look at that and tell that. Now, if I were displaying your stats in your evidence room, what would that look like? Yeah, no, we're not doing that. It certainly doesn't look like that. I mean, that's almost 80% of every piece of evidence they've ever brought in has been disposed of. Okay? Let's go back to that scenario I gave a little bit earlier today. Let's say Joe shows up at your room tomorrow, and when Joe does show up at your room, he doesn't just ask you 3 or 4 questions. He's got like a 20-page document that probably has 150 different summary type things on it. I don't know, it may or may not be that exact. But he's certainly not going to ask just 5 questions. Imagine if tomorrow, and I know it's not going to be as quick as tomorrow, but imagine if you knew what your crap was. Imagine your day was not filled with just putting this crap in the system. You actually were involved in the disposition process. Imagine, some of you have to really imagine hard. Imagine that was your evidence process. Okay? Sounds pretty good, doesn't it? All right? All right, so moving along here, that is our dashboard screen. The other really cool thing about this is you can actually build searches and save them and have them come up on the dashboard. If you want your dashboard to have 200 elements of data on it, you can do that. The point is you should be in a good position of answering questions that are asked of you versus I have no idea or I'd rather quit my job than have to go find out what that answer is. And some of you may be in that mode. I quit my job first. Okay? So let's show you some of the basics of what this thing does and how we begin to accumulate these statistical pieces of information. So what I want to do is let's start out with something really basic. I want to go look at a case that I already have in the system. So let me flip back. I don't want to operate with the join. That would not make me very happy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go bring up a case. Let me see here. I've got 116. Sorry here. Ben, test. So I'm going in and I'm searching for a case that I already have in the system, and I think, let me find one that probably has some digital evidence in it. So what I'm simply doing, yes, that does not have any digital evidence in it. Let me try one more. I should have this better lined up. Hopefully this one's got one in there. Nope, I'll show you how we have digital evidence. Come on. Oh, there, this is a good one. All right. So I basically just, not that this really matters, I went to the top right-hand corner, I typed in the case number, and I said, hey, bring this case up for me. So within the case view, I can very quickly look at the case, and I can tell within the case, I can tell, very quickly, the offense location was Home Depot. It's a test offense. It's back from August 2016. But more importantly, up at the top, I can tell I've got 2 persons in the case, 32 items, 100 pieces of media, and 1 note. So let's just go through here real quick and let's see what we're looking at. Because what most people would look at, here's all my physical evidence. So it's going to bring up, here's a list of all the physical evidence within that case. And everything's color coordinated, so anything in red has been disposed of so it stands out. Anything that's checked out is yellow, and then checked in is up there at the top. So that's cool. I mean, most systems are going to allow you to go in and see a list of physical evidence. But what is really cool is when you flip one tab over and you see a list of all the digital media that is stored right within that same case. Again, like I said earlier, this is not hopping into 2 different systems to find all of this stuff. It literally is, it is all right there. Okay? I'm just curious, how many in here are dealing with digital evidence and trying to manage that? I'm just Okay, that number's getting bigger and bigger, and it's you know, actually the reason most of you probably are not dealing with it is because it's a separate person and a separate job in a different area. But imagine it was all within the same system. So just to show you a couple of things that happen here. So for example, this video right here, I'm going to click on it because that is an MP4 file. Now, you may look at that and say, what the heck is that dude doing right there? That is actually a PDA device that we used to sell with our software. Some of the vendors that are out there, that's like the latest and greatest they've got. These things are horrible, and one of our clients hated it so much. He literally took the PDA device, lit it on fire, put it in the jaws of life, and lit the thing up. Now, not that that really matters right there. I'm just sort of, that's old technology, and if whatever vendor you're talking to, they're pitching that little device right there, if you're not using your phone, your iPhone, or your Galaxy, or whatever you've got, this is just old school, and there it goes. So, now, the reason I showed that off is because when I click on the details of that media right there and go into it, look down at the very bottom down there. Here's my chain of custody on it. Today is 12/15, 2016. It is 1:09 p.m. I'm in Eastern Time. And you can tell I did a read on that media. So not only do you have all the media in the system, but every time somebody opens it, downloads it, even deletes it. Because at some point you're going to get to a point where, hey, I want to delete this thing. So watch, let's just do a couple of quick transactions on this. We're going to go back. Here's a list of all of my media. And I'm going to put a checkbox next to it. And we're going to say, I want to, where's my download? Oh, here we go. Sorry. Click multiple ones. And I'm going to say, yes, I want to download these 2 pieces of media. So you'll notice down here in the very bottom left-hand corner of my computer, once this thing catches up here, it's going to download a zip file. But there it is. So I'm going to say, no, I don't want to save that. And we're also going to delete these items. Because eventually, one of the points of digital media, in fact, the biggest problem we see in the digital media world is just like your physical evidence room, this stuff just piles up and piles up and piles up, and nobody ever deals with the digital media. Before you know it, you've got 6 terabytes of crap sitting back on a server that you have no clue what's going on. So if you're more aware of this stuff is in here, it's 2 years old, I can delete it. So I'm going to go ahead and delete these 2 pieces of media very quickly. It now lists them as deleted. But here's the really, really important part of this. Look at my chain of custody. On this date and time it was read, on this date and time it was downloaded, on this date and time it was deleted. Okay? You can very simply go over here to the left side of my screen. I want to do a search. Here's all your searching options over on the left. You can go in and search for stuff that's been checked out to a specific person. Again, we should be able to get pretty quick access to this stuff. Watch this search right here. I'm going to go into my media search. I want to search all the media in the software. I want everything that is active and the upload date is older than 365 days. And now I'm going to search for it. And in pretty short order, it should come back and tell me how many pieces of media are older than 365 days, and the answer is 255 items. That's active media sitting in the system. So now I would know, delete it. Yes?
Will allow you to download audio files as well, or just did?
Those can be any type of files. They can be Word docs, PDFs, Excel, MP4s, whatever else you want. Now, one last thing I do want to throw out, because this is something new that we've done with media. A lot of people will look at this and say, wow, that looks really cool. Where's all that media being stored? Well, it's in our system on the cloud. We actually developed a system that will allow you to store all of your media locally in your building, but we can reference it within the software. So you can still manage all the digital evidence from within here, but the actual file, that 100 meg file, the 200 meg, the audios or whatever, they can reside back in your building. They don't have to get uploaded to the web. Everybody else that's selling these things, and I want to throw out, you can do either one. You could say, I don't want them in my building. And there's probably people in this room that would say, you know what, I love my IT people, but I really wouldn't trust them as far as I could throw them. I'd rather get the media out of my building. And then there's another group of people in here saying, I don't want to put that stuff in the cloud. I don't want to pay. Has anybody ever gotten a quote for a digital evidence system like evidence.com and how much it costs to put all that data out in the cloud? Anybody ever done that? Those can be $15,000, $20,000, $30,000. Brian, Charlotte Mecklenburg, he said they spent $7 million on putting that stuff out in the cloud. Okay? So we have a component that allows you to store it locally or put it in the cloud, either way you want. The thing I really want to emphasize, one system, physical, digital, right next to each other. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. How am I doing on time? Oh, Joe's gonna, is that time right back there? Is it 12, 10 after 12?
Yes.
Good. All right. Okay, so we can see I've got all of that in here. Let's go back and do another couple of very basic things within the software. So let's go back. I want to bring up the case. Over on the left side of my screen, it'll show the last 20 cases that I have ever viewed. So we can go in and do that. Just to show you very quickly how easy it is to just grab media and drop it into the system here. So I'm going to go in. So I go into this case. I go to the media tab. Here is a file right here. I want to drag that in. So now this is going to load more media into the case. The idea behind this, so there's the new piece of media that I just uploaded, and you can tell now I've got 101 pieces of media in that case, if you can see that. Okay? So let me show you just very quickly what an officer might do to enter items in here. Because in the end, this should not be you loading all of this stuff in the software. Because if your job every day, and I don't want to ask, I don't know how many people in here are dealing with this. I see a lot of departments where the officers will handwrite out a piece of paper. Please don't identify yourself if this is you. Where the officer handwrites out a piece of paper, they turn it over to somebody in the evidence room, and they sit down and put it in the computer software. Okay? That is almost as big a waste of time as there is on the planet. I'm not even talking in the evidence world. I'm talking about just any world. That is a horribly, the amount of time is just tremendous. So what we want is your officers to log in here. Now you may say, well, we got a bunch of knuckleheads. They'll never figure this out. Okay? Everybody's got their fair share of knuckleheads. I understand that. But nobody in all my years has ever said, I'd rather write that on a piece of paper than I'd rather log into a piece of software to add it. So here's how this looks. Your officer will go in. Now, many of these things that are on here, your question may be, well, what are they going to see? Are they going to see all these stats? No. These are for the org administrators. This is the more elevated statistical stuff. When your officers log in, they're going to see things like, how much evidence have I entered? How much media do I have in the system? They're going to see things related to them. Okay? So what they're going to do is go over to the left. I mean, this is so easy that even a knucklehead can figure it out. All right? We go over here to the left side of the screen, and there's a button to add a case, person, and item. So they're pretty much going to follow what that is. Now, by the way, for my couple of clients that are in this room, you may be looking at this and saying, what the heck is this thing compared to what I've got? This is the one we've been building for the last 3 years, and it's now coming out in the last year. So you have what is our legacy product that looks very different than this. But you're going to look at this and be like, I like that one. Can I get into that thing? And so we can talk about that later. I just want those couple people to know, why does this look different than what I have? So I'm going to go over to the left-hand side of my screen, and we're going to do something very simple, like I want to add an item. And while this may seem monotonous, I just want you to see this is what an officer is going to deal with. Number one, what kind of an item is it that I'm entering? So we'll just say that this item is a drug, because that's a very common item. So I'm going to put it in that case. I'm going to click next. And now the officer is going to fill this out, all these fields. And it's pretty simple. You just start typing it actually here. So this one, this is tied into Google Maps. So when I type in Home Depot, that literally should be the closest Home Depot to where I'm sitting at. Who recovered it? We start typing in the name of a person, this guy right here. When did we recover it? Yesterday. What's the description? It's 1 pound of marijuana. Okay? And why did we collect it? We'll go with this. Let's not go with found property of a drug. It was evidence. Okay? And then we've got some other questions that don't have to be filled out. I'm going to go down here and pick a location where I want to put it at. I want to put it into, now if they select, if this is an officer logged in and they select a location they don't have access to, it'll block them from putting it in there, all right? So they're going to select something like a temporary locker, and I'm going to go with this one right here. And then down at the bottom, it's got a lot of questions because I said that it was a drug. All right, am I going to send this to the lab? Yes, I want to go in. You know, what kind of a drug is it? It's marijuana. Now, the reason this is sort of a repetitive question to the description is because I want to do searches on how much marijuana do I have. That's why we ask these questions down at the bottom. The reason we ask, what is the weight of this drug? Okay, so we go in and we put how much packaging, you know, if it's pills or plants, you know, whatever. When you put those numbers in, you can summarize all of this. How much marijuana do I have sitting in my room right now? I mean, would anybody in here have any clue, actually down to the ounces, how much stuff is sitting in their room? And the answer is, there's no way anybody in here has that answer. Okay? That was one of my stats on the main screen. What's the weight of all these drugs? What's the amount of the currency that I have? Okay? So this is what the officer is essentially going to fill out. when they're done, they're going to say, hey, I want to go in and I want to view the case. So we save it, and now we just entered, I don't remember what, we have 32 items in there, there's now 33. They can also go, another really cool thing for the officer, is they can go in and say, I want to duplicate an item. Let's just say that that drug, I've got 10 packages of the exact same thing, and right now they're sitting down and putting all, you go right down to the bottom and say, I want to duplicate it, and watch this. We got drugs, I duplicated, you know what? I duplicated the top item, not the item I just entered, so I don't want you to think I'm crazy there. Let's go back real quick. All right, so all the way at the bottom, let's go find the 32nd item that I entered. There it is right there. That's the one I just entered, the 1 pound of marijuana. I want to go ahead and duplicate that item, and now it's going to run me right through the item entry, but everything's already filled in. Look at that. So this next item wasn't a pound, it was 2 pounds. I'm going to store it in the same spot. Everything else about that item is the same. I confirm I'm duplicating it. Boom, I just entered another item in the system. Okay? So now, what does your officer do when they're done entering all the items? One of the most basic things they're going to do is select items, and then they're going to have a whole list of reports up here. What do they want to do next? This is the most common report, and I said I wasn't going to highlight from the barcode label, but there's a barcode label. Okay? I mean, for the officer, their job becomes, I want you to log in, I want you to add the case, then I want you to add your evidence, and then I want you to go to the media tab, and if there's any media, load it up into there. And that's what they do, and then they log out and they're done. Your world then becomes, I'm just going to verify that stuff that they just brought in, and I'm going to get it into the room. So now, if you're not processing all that crap that's coming in, your job starts at, I'm just going to take it and go with it. You just unloaded a ton of work. And I'd love to say, I keep saying this year after year, in 2016, you would not think that people are using pen and paper. I mean, that sort of went out 20 years ago. But yet, in the evidence world, people still use pen and paper. They still have their officers write things on paper, and then they come in and they enter it all into the system. I would love to say, man, that was 20 years ago, but in today's world, a lot of people are still doing that. This is how you begin to automate everything. Okay? Yes?
Will it pull the information over from our report writing system?
Actually, so yes, yes and if. They would have to tie into the back end of the software. So in larger departments, like I think, are you St. Louis?
Yeah.
Okay, so in the case of St. Louis, if you're a really large department, instead of having the officers sit down and enter the case and all the persons, that can be all tied into whatever your RMS system. Now, that's a whole discussion with IT people. But I think we already have that even with the existing system right now. Do they enter the case into our software?
The officer?
Yeah, I think that's already built into that. So with St. Louis, even today in our legacy product, all of that case information is automatically dumped from that other product. But I will tell you, that is a conversation with your IT people, that is a conversation with the RMS vendor to explain to them how that works in our software, and then they can pump all that stuff in. So, who knows if they're going to want to go through all that.
They can access it or enter the information from any machine as long as they can get to it.
I get that. That's exactly what it is. And I guess, so his question was, where can they enter this information from? Well, I would say if they're at a Joe Law IAPE class and they have their laptop and they're tied into a Wi-Fi, can they enter a piece of evidence? Absolutely. Now, there are options within the software where you can actually block out where they can enter evidence. You can say it's only in my building I want them to enter evidence, and you can do IP blocking and things like that. But most places are going to say, in fact, I would argue, where is the when is the best time to collect information about a piece of evidence? The sooner. I'm talking about as close to the actual date and time that the evidence is picked up, that is the best time to enter the evidence. Not 3 days later after they finally came in out of their car and finally decided they wanted to enter it, or worst case scenario, they write it out on paper. The evidence person is the first person that logs in when the chain of custody shows who entered the item, the evidence person. And my first question would be like, wait a minute, hold on, did the evidence person go out and collect that stuff at the scene? Where's the officer? Well, see, we don't do it that way. They bring it back and we put it on paper, and then 3 days later we put it in. It's like, wait a minute, you do that? That's the stuff we hear over and over again. So yes, I would say, can they do it from the car? That would be advisable, okay? And by the way, just as we're going along, we ask questions. I'm perfectly fine with that. All right, so let me do this. Let's go back. Here's one thing I really want to hit on real quick, is the discrepancy report. All right, so now, show of hands if you don't mind. How many of you within the last 6 months, I'll go 6 months, have done a complete inventory on at least the guns, drugs, and money? You know what is in there, and I've gone through everything. I see 4 hands. Okay, 5. That means everybody else, either you don't want to raise your hand, or in the last 6 months, you've not, let me expand that. How about the last year? Let's go out to the year. Does any more hands go up because I just made it a year? About 3 years. 3 years. In the last 3 years, it's still the same 5 hands? Okay. So what that ultimately means for most of the people in this room, you've never done an inventory, a full-blown inventory. Well, you may not have a system that even allows that to happen. So I think Joe talks about the idea of a discrepancy report. So within this software, you got this thing up and running. One of your primary jobs becomes doing inventories on these items. Okay? So the way you do that within our software is you just go into this area right here. You say, I want to do a new report. And then you name it, you scan your location, and boom, you start going in and you scanning all the items and all the locations. And I see St. Louis not, because St. Louis, they've had some big problems in the past. I don't know if you, they're on Joe's board somewhere. I don't know if he's highlighted St. Louis, but unfortunately they've been on TV. There were money problems. This was 5, 6, 7 years ago. So the people in their evidence room now, they are on top of doing these discrepancy reports. So it's very simply this. You go in, you scan the barcode of the location you're doing an inventory on, and you scan every barcode on every item. And then you go on to the next location, you do that. Now, notice a little bit ago, I didn't say a full inventory on your entire evidence room. At the very least, I think everybody in here would agree that it's advisable that once a year you do an inventory on your guns, drugs, and money. If you don't do that, your butt's flapping in the wind out there. That's just going to be a matter of time before that comes back to bite somebody. All right? So if you had something like this and you could produce a report that looked like this, let me go back and just run one. I think hopefully this is one in here that's got a little bit of data in it. Let me run this one right here. Okay, that doesn't have a lot of stuff on it. Let me see if I can, you know what? Just to really put Des Moines on the line, let's go back to Des Moines. By the way, they're cool with me showing this off. And let me go in here. So this is actually one they just did. Ah, perfect, I like this one. All right, so they went into, I can tell you up at the top, the audit location, they went into whatever that locker is, PR1573A. They just did an inventory on this 2 days ago. And as I go down the list, you can see on here, all these barcodes got scanned, but they're invalid. The entire purpose of this discrepancy report is to show you the difference in what it should be and what it is. Okay? So again, all you have to do is scan all the barcodes on all the locations. So let me scroll down a little bit and see if we can get something that's a little bit more valid on it. Okay, so like these items right here, these 51 items. Now the reason this is probably the way that it is because we imported data out of an old system and who knows how correct that stuff is. But they had 51 items that were supposed to be in that location that did not get scanned. And it sends them, here's a list of all the items. You should have scanned all of these items in it. And as we go down a little bit further, we get past all those items. That's actually the last of them. There are 8 different discrepancies that it will pick up. It'll tell you if you scanned an item that was marked disposed. Could you even imagine a scenario where an item that was marked disposed is still sitting on a shelf? I mean, accidents happen, they're going to do that. What about scanning an item that's marked checked out? Can you imagine somebody brought an item back into the evidence room and forgot to check it in? So there are 8 different discrepancies it will pick up. The only thing you've got to do is consistently go in, scan all the items in that location, and that report, now maybe you print out a report that looks like that, and you're like, nah, I'm not going to submit that to the chief, that looks like a train wreck. Run it, look at it, maybe you have auditors coming in, you're like, you know what, I'm going to run through and check all of this stuff so that you know what the results are going to be before they show up. Run this report, find your problems, fix them, and then rerun the report if you need to, because these things cannot be modified. Once you run them, they're set. If there's a clean report in here, it's because they went through and it was clean. You literally would have to go back and run it again. We don't allow you to run a report and then fix all the problems and then doctor the results. You'd have to go back and do it again. Okay? But imagine that if you could go in and run these reports, you know audit's going to come in next week or whatever. Imagine if you knew your room was clean. I mean, how many of you right now, again, if I go back to earlier, you don't have to answer this. How many of you know your room is clean right now? Man, I know what's on that shelf is supposed to be on that shelf, and they can, sure, come in and do whatever you want. All right? Sort of back to my joke that I made earlier about Joe Lotta showing up at your evidence room. You should not sweat about that stuff. You should welcome that. You should, once a year, you should turn over a report like this to the chief to say, hey, you know what? I'm in good shape. Because if you can't say that, Either you're going to have a problem, or they're going to have a problem. So let me finish off with a question, and then I want to answer any questions you guys might have. So here's the question I would ask you to think about for a second. What would you say is the most significant improvement your predecessor made in the evidence room? Now take just a minute, get a mental image of the person you took over for. Does everybody know what everybody knows what that person looks like? You can laugh. I know, hey, you didn't like that person, whatever the case. Think about the most significant thing they did for you. Some of you may say, well, they left. That was the most significant thing they did, was to actually leave their position. Okay? So whatever your answer is to that, we don't have to go around for that. Think about what that answer is. And now let me ask you another question. What do you think your successor will have to say about you? Okay, so they're going to be sitting in this room, you know, when you retire, you get out of evidence in 30 years or whatever the number is. And, you know, now Joe's still doing the class. I mean, 30 years from now, Joe's still here doing the classes. And we're going to ask the question. Think of the person before you. What's the most significant thing they did? Some of you in the room are the kind of people where it's like, man, I want this stuff clean. You just cannot stand it to not be clean. Some of you may be in the boat, I'm retiring in 2 years, I don't give a flip what that next person's got to deal with. I'm out of here, okay? I would hope most of you would say, look, I don't want to leave that person with the big pile of crap that I'm dealing with today. And so you can either make the choice that I'm going to do something about it, or I'm not. I would argue, and the last thing I want to say, look, I would make the argument, and I think I'd be very successful at this, the most significant thing you can do in your evidence room is not change the locks and all that. I mean, those are all great things. You're going to hear 200 things here that are all awesome things to do. I would argue that an evidence management application should be the core thing you do. It's going to make everything else fall into line. You can do all those other great things and put in cameras and put in all those things. If you do not have an application that's going to help you manage your evidence, and I'm not talking tracking. If you're tracking evidence, tracking to me is it's on the shelf. I know where it's at on the shelf, and I got an idea of that. I'm talking about managing evidence. I want to get it through the disposition process and out of here. So, actually, I didn't even talk about the disposition process. We automate disposition. We send out notifications to the case officer. We say, what's up with this evidence? They respond. You track everything in task within the software. There is no more sending them an email or a smoke cloud or whatever it is you do to ask somebody what's going on that they ultimately ignore. I'm talking about the software sends out an automated notification. This case is up for review. What do you want to do with it? All you begin to do at that point is manage their response to the task. That's why a few minutes, 10 minutes time, right? I didn't want them to yell at me. Okay? When you begin to realize that, and there's no way you could buy this software tomorrow, and it may be a year before you're in a position of automating the disposition. The minute you begin to do that automated disposition, your worlds are going to change. In fact, just to give you sort of a reality of the world, Omaha, Nebraska implemented our software 4 years ago. They have almost 1 million pieces of evidence scattered across all their evidence rooms. They just called me last week. It was literally out of nowhere. I wasn't expecting it. She told me, after 4 years, we finally have everything cleaned up. It took them 4 years, close to 1 million pieces of evidence to straighten it all out. But now, they're ready to turn on that automated disposition process, because what they want to do is they want to, the way the captain described it, we want to dispose of evidence at an alarming rate. That was his quote. That's what we want to be doing. All right? If the stuff is not leaving the room at an alarming rate, it's coming in at an alarming rate. Would you guys agree with that? I mean, we live today, more and more is coming in. It's coming in at an alarming rate. If you're not keeping up with that, it's going to be a matter of time before you just get overwhelmed, and you're probably overwhelmed by it, and it all falls apart. 2 questions I know you're going to want to ask. How much does this cost, and can I import data from another system? So let me throw those out, and then we're going to do questions. So number one, what does this cost? The way we sell the licensing on this software is based on concurrent licenses. How many are people logged in at the exact same moment in time? Now, how many officers you have and how many people are likely to log in at the same moment in time is going to play a part in that. St. Louis has like 20 licenses to our product. The average client is 2, 3, 4, 5 licenses somewhere in there. Okay? So that's one of the things we have to figure out is how many people are going to log in. The software is roughly $3,000 a year per concurrent license. It is not the cheapest thing out there, but all you've got to do is start getting quotes on digital systems and physical systems, and you may be into $100,000 before you even blink at it. So one of the things we would do to get you a correct quote is to talk to you about the concurrent licensing, how much hardware you might need, are there any professional services included like data import, and then we would get you to an exact number. But this system is not millions of dollars. St. Louis didn't spend millions of dollars, and they're what we would consider a large agency. Okay, does that give everybody at least a basis? It is not $1 million software, but it's also not, you know, $500 software. If you want $500 software, you're going to see a bit of a difference between this and that. The last thing is, can we import data out of another system? We do that all the time. We want to do that. It may be crap, but the best way to get started is to get all of that stuff sort of segmented into a crap area, and then we can start to clean it up. That's that whole process where with Omaha it took a lot of years, a lot longer than I would have ever expected. But some departments knock it out a lot quicker. I gave you an example of one of the largest clients we have 1 million pieces of evidence in their room. Not too many people in here are going to have 1 million pieces of evidence they're dealing with. Okay, even Des Moines, I mean, they got 500 officers and they have 142,000. So, okay, I got 8 minutes left for questions, and Joe will give me the hook. Yes.
On one of those previous slides, you had you had the digital.
Yes.
And then it had that hashtag on there.
Yes. So
when you create an inventory, can you hash that document? The reason I say that because you could go in and do an inventory.
Yep.
And then manipulate it from the original document, but that hash proves
right.
that.
So what happens, so he's talking about the hash key that was generated. So if some of you are like really technical and into digital media, every actual piece of media contains a hash key. So it's a really long code that when you take the entirety of the document, you can get a hash key. So if you have two different documents that are supposed to be the same, but the hash keys are different, then that means somebody has doctored the thing. So what I would say is the way the hash key is generated in our software is every time the file is uploaded. So if you were to download the file and rerun it on some other hash system, it better be the same. Or if you take that document and upload it multiple times, the hash keys better be the same. So, but the thing about our software is, I don't know, you probably didn't notice this, there's no doctoring the images when they're up there. We don't have anything to go in and edit the actual PDF file, the doc or whatever. The worst they could do is download it, doctor it, re-upload it again as a different file, but then the hash keys will be different. Okay. We even showed that just while we were in that. Did you notice when we were on one of the video images, like we take all the metadata from the file and we load it up in there so you can do searching on metadata. So, you know, if you're uploading the camera car videos, you can actually go in and do searches of all my stuff older than this period of time based on data that's in the metadata file. You know, we have all that in there so that you can search against all that. Sorry, for a lot of you that was, sorry, I talked geek for just a minute. Anybody else with a question? How's lunch? Better than leaving and going to the vending machine or whatever else you're going to get?
So what's the best way to have our agency contact you if it's something that you think would be?
Yeah, I have. So I went 1,000,000 miles an hour. Probably the best step. If you looked at that, we're like, you know what? That looks really interesting. What I would suggest, we do online demos of the software. We line up an online demo. I would get some of the powers that be in the room and say, I want you to go look at that thing, because what we're not doing is that, you know. Sort of the way you got to do is you got to build the pain up. You got to go back and tell them, listen, now I got this problem, and this problem. There's the answer to it. Can you at least look at it? Okay? And I'll give you my contact information so that you can get a hold of me
Can you
and do that.
with this, other than evidence, like just inventory?
Assets, inventory. Yeah, you can do all of that stuff in there. Actually, the way the software is set up, there's a, here, I'll show this off because I've literally got a few more minutes. Let me go back to the software. So inside my settings area, there's this thing right here. Let me find it, translation. Most softwares don't have anything like this. You can literally go into our software and translate every button and every field and everything that it says. So when you're talking about tracking assets and things like that, the only difference between an asset and evidence are the types of data you collect on them. So we've actually got an asset tracking system set up to where it's just the translation file is very different and all the fields that are filled in are very different. But you're still, I got an item, I want to put a barcode on it, I want to track chain of custody, I want to do inventories, it's all the same thing. Yes?
Do we give one unit access to that but not allow them access to our?
That's a really good one too. So for somebody like St. Louis where they've got maybe a drug unit, in fact Des Moines was this exact way. Let me show you this. That's exactly what Des Moines was dealing with when they set up. Actually, here is Des Moines. So let me break this down a little bit. There are 4 different units in there. And the reason they have those 4 different units in there is so that they can give them permissions in one unit that they don't have in another. So like, for example, they're drug people, they've got their own drug locker in their own building. So they give them the ability to check items in and out, but only within the drug unit. And then eventually those items are transferred over to evidence. They move them over to there, but then those people lose that access within the evidence unit. Yep.
So you would have to have an administrator license and then a user license.
Okay, so that was a good question. How many licenses am I going to need? Again, what you got to do is look at how many people are going to log in. You're one of those people.
Right.
You have the ability in our software to allocate a license to yourself. So let's say your agency got 2 licenses. You may say, hey, I'm one of them. I always want to be able to log in. Everybody else can fight over the other one. Now, keeping in mind, my entire purpose in this world as it comes to this software is to give you more reason to have more people logging in. Let me give you a scenario. What about your attorneys? And how many times do they call you on the phone and they want a video of this, that, or the other? You got to download it and burn it and all this. What if your attorneys could log in, bring up a case, view the video stuff, and they never had to call you on the phone? Okay? That's more reason to have more people logging in. Not that you have to do that, but in Omaha, the reason they have 20 licenses is because when the courts call, they don't even answer them anymore. They're like, listen, we'll give you a login, you go get whatever you need. We're not answering questions on the phone about where's evidence at, where's the digital stuff, I want to see this, can you give me a chain of custody? We don't do that stuff. We want them logging in. Don't have to do that, but that is an option. Yes?
What about like updates that new versions come out?
Yeah, so that happens very regularly. So because what I'm showing is a cloud-based system. Now, St. Louis is running this in their building. So actually, when you do something like that, it actually becomes far harder to get updates. We update this thing every bit of once a month. And so we send out notifications letting you know, hey, these are the updates that are coming. Like, for example, iPhones. You guys may have never done this, but Google has it's called multi-factor authentication. So you're going to get into that world. Eventually, people are going to say you can't just log in with a username and password. You got to look at your iPhone, get a code off of it, so that when you log in, you apply that code. We just built that into our software. There's no cost to it, and it's something you can use or not use, but we come out with things all the time. And we give you a heads up they're coming, and then you know they're coming. I think the cool thing is we're at a point now where we're not doing things where it's like I got to retrain all the officers. Those buttons are set over there. They're not going to change. You know, it's not, the things that we're building are typically for you. And then we have training classes every year. We have 6 training classes across the country. We do one in Orlando, one in Las Vegas, so just pick a site you really want to go to. And we do training classes once a year that if you want to go out and do those, which are highly advisable, you can keep up with all the things that are going on.
So you have to have the license for each officer?
No, you don't have to do that because that would be very expensive.
So just
you have to sit down, it's not even computer, it's how many people need to log in at the same moment in time. So that's all you're paying for. So again, I mean, all your 100, if you had 100 officers, how many of them are going to log in at the same moment in time? A very low number. You know, that's why for a small department, you're going to get maybe 2 licenses, one for the administrator, one for the other officers, because worst case scenario, they log in, there's not a license available, it tells them come back later and then they can log in. That's all right for that to happen a little bit, but you just don't want that to be every day. You don't want to have so few licenses nobody can log in because they're not available. Make sense? All right, guys, I'm out of time. I hope that wasn't too fast. I hope you got a little bit out of that. I'll hang out for another 20 minutes. I've got cards in the back. If there's anything I can help you out with, I appreciate you guys staying. Thank you.
Thanks for doing that.
Thank you. How'd my video do? Were you okay? Still running?
Yeah.
I actually had one question for you though.
Yes, sir.
I work for a forensic laboratory, so